Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we have our final match analysis video of the season. Of course, the Champions League final, Manchester City versus Inter. So today we're going to be talking about the tactics which we saw from Inzaghi, which caused real problems for City, but how Guardiola and his side still got over the line to finally win this famous trophy and to complete the treble. We're going to see some tactical surprises along the way. We're going to see some typical Manchester City patterns along the way as well. So let's basically get into it. And we're going to start the video by talking about what we didn't see in this game. And that is Manchester City's normal formation. When the lineups came out, the team sheet, I was live streaming at the time. I said, yep, Pep Guardiola hasn't overthought it this time. City will play in their normal shape. We were expecting City to be in this 3-box-3 shape. But it didn't actually happen. However, the reason it didn't happen is because Inter were ready to lock on to this shape. So a lot of people have spoken about the fact that Manchester City did change shape. No one's really talking about why, so I just want to break that down quickly. The reason City didn't go for this shape is because they thought that Inter would be ready for it. The reason for this is because the double pivot of Stones and Rodri could have potentially been locked down by Edin Dzeko. Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne could have been followed by Calhanoglu and Barella. And even Haaland, who likes to drop into these areas, could have been covered by Brozovic. And that was the thing which Pep Guardiola was worried about, all of his players being marked all over the pitch. The other concern he had was that if his players were to push forward into a front five like this, he wouldn't be able to outnumber the Inter defence in the way that his side normally does. Normally City play up against a back four, so City's front five overloads them. And this was actually something which he alluded to a couple of days ago in his interview before the game. This was something that he kind of mentioned. So we thought Manchester City were going to be in this shape, but they weren't, and that is because they were worried about how Inter would match up. So instead we saw City in a slightly different shape. We saw this midfield rotate, and it went a little bit like this. Rodri now played as a singular pivot. John Stones pushed up into this right half space. De Bruyne went to the left-hand side, which I thought was quite an interesting decision. And Gundogan went here as kind of the 10, the tip of the diamond. Now, unfortunately for Kevin De Bruyne, he went off injured quite early on, so Gundogan went to the left centre mid position, and Phil Foden came in as the 10. But this is Manchester City's formation now. The 3 at the back here, then a diamond in midfield, and then a front 3 like this, with Bernardo Silva and Grealish kind of getting forward and providing the width. Now the plan here for Pep Guardiola was that his back 4 would be able to outnumber the Inter front 2. Rodri could therefore be the spare man. He could create the 4 versus 3 in midfield here, and also his players could push forward to create a 6 versus 5 in the final third. I genuinely believe that was the blueprint which Pep Guardiola was going for, so I completely understand why he went for it. However, it didn't actually work that well. On paper it looks quite nice, but the execution wasn't there. And that's because largely, Inter were absolutely brilliant in this game, but also Manchester City just weren't on it. So starting from the back, even Ederson for example, there was a nervous energy about this whole Manchester City team. Of course we talk about them being absolute machines in the biggest games. They weren't in this one. They were very human in this game. There was that nervous energy, there was poor touches, silly decisions, a lack of communication. City were nervous, City were struggling. The first half was basically Guardiola shouting relax and calm down to his players, because his players were being erratic on the ball. However, this wasn't just through nerves, this also was through pressure from Inter Milan. And it's because Inter pressed way higher up the pitch than we expected. So for example, City got the ball at the back with the centre-backs. Lautaro Martinez would come across here and apply a pressure to Akanji. The ball goes across to Diaz, Edin Dzeko was there and ready to press. Now you might see 2 free players here. One of them is Rodri in this position, the other is Aki. However, Inter were ready to lock onto that and go super aggressive. Brozovic was following Rodri all over the pitch into these areas. You've got Barella was stepping out to form the front 3 to apply pressure. Now again you might see that the problem here though is that Gundogan is going to be spare. If Aki can kind of work the ball, Gundogan's going to be free and can then carry the ball forward. However, that wasn't the case either, because Darmian at centre-back done a really good job of being super aggressive, stepping super high, going man for man with Gundogan and stopping him from getting the ball in these areas. Anyone like Foden or Haaland tries to get the ball, the centre-backs are there as well. So whereas City sometimes have this outball of going long, they didn't have it in this game. Now the one tiny bit of joy which this kind of situation did lead to for Manchester City was when Haaland could occasionally get in the channel here. With Darmian stepping out, if he was a little bit slow to get to Gundogan, we could see a slipped pass here, and we did see a couple of shots from Haaland in this area. One inside the opening 15 minutes when he was offside, and then another later in the game. Apart from that though, that was Haaland's only real impact on the game. I've got it written here that he had 19 touches, and he completed 3 out of 8 passes. Haaland didn't play much of a role in this game at all. Of course, his presence is always a big factor in terms of, making the opposition defenders nervous, but we didn't actually see that much of Haaland. And it's because Inter defended so well. They were so much more aggressive than I think a lot of us were expecting off the ball, often moving to this front three to apply pressure to the ball. They're man for man in the midfield. Darmian's being super aggressive all the way from centre-back, and Inter defended really well. City were nervous as well, and it led to a very weird game of football where there was no control from Manchester City. However, of course, playing with this energy for a full 90 minutes, it's going to take it out of you eventually, so there were spells where Inter had to sit a little bit deeper. And of course we saw that. They are happy to get men behind the ball, and at times they would drop more into their typical 5-3-2 shape. And when this happened, we started to see City creating overloads. We knew that Inter couldn't play with the same intensity for 90 minutes, and eventually, City did start to take a bit of control as the game went on. And again, there's a few reasons for this, and this is where Pep Guardiola's plan starts coming into play. So initially, we've got the back three of Manchester City up against just the front two of Inter, which means that if the ball is down this side, and Inter do kind of want to shuffle across a little bit, if the ball can be worked across to Aki on the other side, he now has the potential to step forward because they've outnumbered the Inter players at the front. Now they can step forward. Now the result of this is that Manchester City now have their first overload. This wide overload here in these areas. Now, to be fair, to give credit to Barella and Calhanoglu, they've done a brilliant job of covering this sort of ground. They were absolutely fantastic. However, they did still get dragged out occasionally simply because City had this overload with the centre-back. So for example, Barella would now have to go and engage the ball here. Brozovic would then have to shift across. Calhanoglu would then have to shift across. What this did do though, was leave room on the other half space for John Stones. This was something which again I spoke about in my live stream. We covered it towards the end of stream. A couple of things to watch out for. I said about City building the ball down the left hand side, shifting the ball to the right hand side and getting De Bruyne in the half space and then crossing from there. Now, of course it wasn't De Bruyne in the space, it was John Stones, but the pattern was still the same, and this did allow City to move the ball forward. Now, to be fair, I think this is where Pep Guardiola maybe got it a little bit wrong and overthought it a little bit. There wasn't a need for John Stones to be in this high right half space in my opinion. I think this was always going to be the position where City would have the spare man. So to put John Stones there instead of De Bruyne doesn't make too much sense to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, John Stones was incredible in this game. Maybe man of the match, unbelievable performance. But what he doesn't offer you in this half space is crosses into the box or that kind of killer pass. So I think Pep got that a little bit wrong and he got a little bit lucky with how it played out. He did make this decision wrong in my opinion because City kind of worked this overload, got this bit of half space. But like I said, Stones just doesn't have that killer pass in him, which meant that Inter could kind of shift across, get back behind the ball and defend really, really well. And this was what we saw for pretty much the whole game. Pep Guardiola had a tactical plan, we could see the blueprint which he was going for, as we discussed right at the start, but it just didn't work for large periods, and it's because Inter was so good defensively. However, we know that when you work for Pep Guardiola as a player for a lot of years, a few things happen. One, you're going to win a lot of trophies, you're going to win a lot of football matches, and you're going to play some really nice football. You're going to have a really nice tactical setup, and 9 times out of 10, tactically you will edge the opposition. However, this was that 1 out of 10 situation. Inzaghi, for me, tactically edged this game. I think he had the beating of Guardiola, genuinely. I think he really nullified City. But there is a thing with Manchester City squads. Pep Guardiola instills a certain set of philosophy in his players. It's about not forcing the final pass. It's about taking the extra touch. It's about having width in the final third. It's about making runs off the ball. And it's also about cutbacks. No matter what setup we see from Guardiola, whether it be a 4-3-3, a 3-2-5, a 3-4-3, you always see those little elements which I've just spoken about, and that is what we saw for the goal. So tactically, Pep maybe didn't quite get it in this game, but what he did do right was he proved that he has coached this squad very well for 7 years now. So maybe tactically he didn't quite get it, but his players now, thanks to Guardiola, have such a skill set that they can solve problems for themselves on the pitch. And that's what we saw for the goal, which we're going to look at using Once Video Analyzer Pro, a really, really good video analysis software. You can check it out using the link in the description down below. So, we've got the first kind of idea of Pep Guardiola football here. Overloading one side of the pitch. You know, we can see Manchester City, plenty of attackers in this area. However, things don't quite work out for them. They don't really generate the attack. So instead, they choose to come backwards. Phil Foden gets the ball here. Now, he could go inside to Bernardo Silva here and, you know, try something adventurous. He could try and turn around, take his man and create something. But no, these players are taught in a certain way by Guardiola. If it isn't on, you don't have to force it. Keep the ball, keep moving the ball from side to side, shift the opposition about. That's what we see. Foden takes his time, does really well to protect the ball, kind of comes backwards into this area here. He comes back all the way to Akanji, in fact, all the way back to the centre-back. So they've gone from inside the penalty area, in a dangerous area, all the way back out to the centre-back. But that's not a problem, because Akanji's now going to step forward with the ball. Because Inter got dragged over to one side of the pitch to defend Phil Foden, it opens up the other side. This is what we can see with Akanji now striding forward with the ball. Now, what we see here also is another principle of Guardiola, the front five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players attacking. Stretching the pitch, we've got Grealish at the top, John Stones at the bottom, but then also 3 players occupying those in the centre. So again, it's something we always see from Guardiola, and it just worked in the key moment in the biggest game of the season for Manchester City. The other thing we're going to see here is John Stones providing the width, making the overlapping run forward. He knows that he isn't going to get this ball, but he's making this run, this selfless run off the ball to create space for others. Because DeMarco, we can see his body shape is towards John Stones, not what is behind him. He's fully focused on John Stones. What this does though, is it leaves just a tiny bit of room for Bernardo Silva to run into. And then we see Manchester City using a ball-playing centre-back, another Pep Guardiola philosophy. Akanji slides the ball through, Bernardo Silva gets there, really good ball, and then we see the cutback. Was the cutback on purpose? No, there's a bit of luck in it. We have to be honest on this one. But is it luck that your player is always there on the edge of the penalty area? City always score these goals. On this particular occasion, they didn't choose to cut the ball back as such, but the ball ended up still getting there. And again, the Pep Guardiola philosophy, there's always someone there arriving on the edge for these cutbacks. And on this occasion, it was Rodri. And it was a wonderful goal. And it really kind of sums up Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. Tactically, in this game, he didn't quite get it right. He actually overthought it a little bit, in my opinion. Didn't quite get it right. And Inzaghi and Inter deserve so much credit for that, because defensively they were incredible, and they also provided a massive threat going forward as well. Ederson was forced into some really good saves. But Guardiola has coached these players so well. He's assembled such a good squad. A good technical, tactical, mental, physical squad, which provides in the biggest moments. And that, ultimately, is how Manchester City won the Champions League. Let me know though what you think in the comments down below. Who was your man of the match? Who did you think disappointed on the night? Who were the best players? What do you think of the tactics? Did Guardiola overthink it a little bit? Did the De Bruyne injury affect the team? How well did Inter do? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. Apart from that though, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I will see you in the next one.